There's a very interesting aspect to the Hanukkah story that yields a great misunderstanding of the lessons we're to derive from that story. And that's because, in many ways, people look at the Hanukkah story in a North American context. They look at the story of revolution to throw off an oppressor in a fight for freedom, and the aspect that the Maccabees were fighting for freedom of religion. But in actuality, that's a great misunderstanding of the Chanukah story. The Maccabees were not fighting for freedom of religion, that anyone should practice any religion they wanted to practice, but rather the Maccabees were fighting for the ascension of Torah. What occurs, and this is really highlighted in the famous introductory event of the rebellion, where Matisyahu, the father of the Maccabee brothers, was confronted by these Greek soldiers in Modin. And what occurred is that these Greeks brought in a statue in the town square and said, whoever, come forward and bow down to the statue. And there was a Jew who stepped forward and wanted to bow down to the statue. And Matisyahu came forward and struck down, killed the Jew who was about to commit idolatry, was about to practice idolatry. This was not the action of someone who was fighting for freedom of religion. This was the action of someone who was fighting for their faith, for their religion, in a battle of imposition of another religion. What occurred is you had actually not foreign Syrian Greeks, but actually Hellenist Jews who wished to have Hellenism become the dominant culture or faith of ancient Israel. And these Hellenists felt that they were thwarted in their attempts to take over the culture of the ancient land by Torah true Jews, by traditional Torah true Jews. Therefore, they created a battle. They created a force of imposition to try and stop people from practicing Torah. And they brought in the assistance of Antiochus, of the king of the Syrian Greeks, by presenting to him a nationalistic problem. Because the truth is, Hellenism, in their own strange way, really advocated freedom of religion. They didn't really care how you practiced. Polytheism was never had a problem with other people's religions. If you have 10 gods, so now you have 20 gods. It's not a problem. So Hellenists, in a certain way, wasn't really bothered by other people's faiths. There's a lot of freedom of religion. The fact is, what the Hellenists actually believed is that Hellenist philosophy, due to its benefits, to its uniqueness, to its strength, would carry people into joining Hellenism, and that's happened throughout the ancient world. Hellenism became the dominant culture, but it was through education, it was through natural processes. They didn't impose their faith. But what happened was that Hellenist Jews, wanting to impose their faith upon, or their culture upon Torah true Jews, basically said to Antiochus that these Torah true Jews were rebellious, nationalistic rebellious. They wanted independence. They didn't want to be under the Syrian Greek rule. And that brought Antiochus into the battle on the sides of these Hellenist Jews. And then the battle ensued. And the fact is after the Maccabees won the battle, they imposed Torah on the community. They said, listen, this is the correct faith. This is the actual faith. They didn't promote freedom of religion. They didn't say, okay, now anyone can do what they want. They brought back the Torah true laws, which really is not very tolerant towards idolatry. You can see that from just learning through a Chumash. The fact is, they didn't support freedom of religion. They supported Torah. And that's really what happened in Chanukah. It was battle of religions. So it's not about freedom of religion. Now, does this mean that Torah does not really hold of freedom of religion? Well, interestingly enough, that would be really problematic to say. Rav Moshe Feinstein, in his Igros Moshe, refers to the United States as Medina Shel Chesed. We, a state a land that has treated us with loving kindness. The fact is, we as Jews have benefited from the value of freedom of religion. So we turn around and say, hey, that was good for us, but if we were in charge, we would just negate it. How can Ramosha call this Medina Shel Chesed when what they're practicing happens to be based upon a value that we would look upon very negatively? The fact is that we actually understand freedom of religion as well, but in a vastly different way than it's understood by most people in America. See, throughout Jewish law, there are indications that show tolerance, that show a sort of understanding of people making different religious choices. We have such concepts of tinik shenishva, right, which literally means someone who is captured by non-Jews, a child has been captured by non-Jews, but someone who has been brought up in a non-Jewish culture. We don't expect them to abide by Torah. As the Rambam says, in applying this concept to the Karaim, to the Karaites, he says their children, not the original Karaites who broke away from the faith, but their children, which basically meant the Karaites that he ran into, who were brought up within that philosophy. That's the way they were brought up. We have to treat them with care, with loving kindness, with ahava. We have to try and educate them back to Torah. We have this concept. We have a concept, even in halacha, of that we don't punish anyone in the ancient Jewish courts unless there was hasra, unless there was a warning given before the person committed the crime, because we want to make sure he knows the law, and the person had to respond, Afal Pikein, even though I know this is wrong, I'm still going to do it. He had to accept Torah. But the most significant aspect of this idea, I'm going to develop what I would call the Torah view of freedom of religion, is that throughout the centuries, when the Jews were persecuted, when other religions persecuted Jews and attempted to try and force them in any way possible to adopt their faith, and we're looking at Christians in ancient times, I can think in terms of fundamentalist Muslims today, the fact that they have no tolerance for any other religion. The great Gedolim, many great Gedolim throughout Europe, they looked at Christianity in a very, very open way. Rather than trying to say, these people are totally heretics, they said, you know something, these people are struggling trying to find the truth. They're struggling with trying to understand God. Therefore, many of our great Gedolim, think of the Ramah, the Meiri, I'm thinking in terms of Yaakov Enden, they had a certain type of acceptance and said, you know, these people are struggling. These people are trying to get the truth. They're clearly getting closer to monotheism. They don't have it right, but you have to respect that they're struggling. They're trying to get closer. This actually seems to be based upon a concept in Rashi, in the Gemara in Shabbos, Daf Lamed Aleph, Hamad Aleph, where Rashi says about someone who has doubt, that someone who has doubt is actually understandable. You know, doubt is not heresy. Doubt is the person doesn't know. And we have to treat that with a certain amount of understanding. See, that's because freedom of religion from a Torah perspective has a very different basis. See, in our perspective, an American perspective, the Western perspective, is that religion is seen as a methodology. There's an attitude of relative truth. There's an attitude that we cannot know the truth. Maybe there's no real truth, but we for sure can't know it. And therefore, what is religion about? Religion is about the method, how we're going to try and achieve spirituality. It's like a Maslowian concept where it's all about the spiritual experience. And the differences between the religions are the differences the way people want to have their spiritual experience. This person does it this way, this person does it that way. But the perception in our world is that freedom of religion is that it's just the methodology people are disagreeing about. We're all interested in the same goal of that religious experience. Therefore, we should be tolerant. People want to do it this way, people want to do it that way. I remember seeing a brochure put out by Liberal Judaism in England. This was put out in the 1980s, where Liberal Judaism in England is basically Reformed Judaism. And in the brochure they asked the question, what's the difference between Unitarian Christianity and Liberal Judaism? And their answer is, really nothing. We both believe the same thing. Our disagreement is how we want to practice. Liberal Jews want to use Jewish motifs in achieving spirituality. Unitarian Christians want to use Christian motifs in achieving spirituality, but it's both the same goal, and that's both aspects of tolerance. That's freedom of religion in the Western viewpoint. But the Torah view of freedom of religion is very different, because we recognize there is an emes. There is a truth. But the problem is that it's a struggle to gain the truth. We have to work hard to know the truth. We are given by HaKadosh Baruch Hu a tremendous challenge in attempting to know the truth. And therefore we understand that in that challenge, people can make mistakes. People can get it wrong. And therefore, from the Torah perspective, and this is really based upon that concept of Rashi, okay, with a Torah perspective, we understand that people who are struggling, people who are trying to deal with the issue, they may get it wrong. But if they're acting in good faith, they're really struggling with the attempt to try and know truth, they're struggling with the attempt to try and be moral, we can respect them for that. We can have a certain amount of chesed to that. We can have a certain amount of tolerance. Even allow a certain amount of freedom of religion. Give them the opportunity to struggle and try and know the emes. That Torah is willing to do, and we advocate that. We advocate people doing the struggle. But it has to be a struggle. Behind that struggle, though, there has to be a recognition that the problem is in the human beings. We are individuals who cannot simply know the truth. We have to struggle with it. We have to attempt to, and we have to have, seriously, doubt. Because doubt is not doubt in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Doubt means a doubt in ourselves, knowing our limitations, knowing our weaknesses. And if we have that, we can't become fanatics, and we treat others with a little bit of respect, knowing that we, human beings, have difficulties, have weaknesses. And that's really what Matisyahu was saying against the Greeks. Those Greeks, once they wanted to impose it, and that's what anyone imposed, with militant Muslims today and so forth. Anyone that says, I'm right, everyone else is wrong, and I'm willing to kill, and I'm willing to impose because I'm right, that's a person who has no humility. That's a person who's narrow-minded. That's a person who has no doubt. He has no questioning of themselves. And the fact is, as Matisyahu said, listen, if you want to impose that upon us, when we win, we're not going to allow this faith, this so-called faith, that is built upon this fanatical belief in oneself, that I am absolutely right, to have any foothold. So as was pointed out to me, before the Hellenist Jews attempted to impose their wishes upon the Torah Jews, the fact is the Torah Jews did present some level of tolerance. They did say, listen, we're going to try and educate them, bring back the Torah, we're going to treat them with caring and so forth and so forth. But the minute the Hellenist Jews showed that we're going to say we're right and we're going to impose upon you, Matisyahu said any faith of that nature that has no understanding of our own weaknesses in having knowledge, people who believe in that perspective, right, we have to impose Torah upon them. We have to respond to them with our own presentation of the truth, because we cannot stand for or allow that type of narrow-mindedness. That's Torah, freedom of religion. We do have a freedom of religion, but we have no freedom, we have no allowance for narrow-mindedness and conceit. The person of that type of dogmatic faith presents narrow-mindedness and conceit, and that Torah does not tolerate.